So, it seems like you're back after another successful crusade. Not only are we getting ever so close to the Holy Grail, we have uncovered more artifacts and more information to make the kingdom stronger. And you, a mere mortal, dare to barter for information? Bah! What exactly do you have to exchange for this immortal information that will make the kingdom even stronger? Wait, you said not only would you join the kingdom, you got Ash Blossom feet pics? What kind of Ash Blossom feet pics? What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day is going phenomenal. And if it ain't, well, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Just get some Ash Blossom feet pics that King Cali ain't seen and we good. Speaking of feet pics, one thing that you definitely don't want to see is defeat. And in this particular guide, I'm going to be giving you the information that you need to know on how to use your hand traps. Time after time, I see so many players using their hand traps wrong, like, Mikado-san, why you use them wrong? And hands down, I've seen a couple of situations where players have lost games. So not only will I tell you the correct times to use these hand traps, I'll even tell you how impactful they are against some of these decks. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Now, before we start talking about these hand traps and where to use them against these particular decks, I bet you may be wondering, where exactly did I get these top decks? Well, not only did I use statistics like Yu-Gi-Oh! Stop, I actually contacted Conspiracy Cali, because I am easily one of the smartest people to help the Cali Kingdom, but also you. Not only did I use these statistics of Yu-Gi-Oh! Stop as well as the top decks, I also knew what decks you were having struggling times with in your mind. And I also knew that these were the hand traps to beat them before anybody else knew, because big conspiracy, big answers. So that being said, not only statistically the top meta decks are Floowandereeze, Sword Soul, Phantom Knights, Frank Kids, and Eldritch, a card that actually does really well against them is Artifact LANCEA. Now, Artifact LANCEA is a very simple card. By tributing this card on your opponent's turn, you can prevent both players from banishing cards for the duration of said turn. Against the Phantom Knight strategy, this card can actually be huge, but what you really want to watch out for is just shotgunning Artifact LANCEA. No, I'm not saying that Phantom Knight players will be mainboarding PSY-FRAMEGEAR Gammons out of their deck, but if you preemptively activate an Artifact LANCEA, it changes how a Phantom Knight player wants to play. The biggest advice to use Artifact LANCEA is after they've summoned their Cherubini and used this effect sending for costs. Take, for example, if they send a card like Water Enchantress of the Temple from the deck to the graveyard, then you can go ahead and Artifact LANCEA them, because now you know they can't get into their Adventure Token engine, and on top of that, they've already committed a card with Cherubini, meaning that they can't change cards to get something else to help them further extend. Against the Sword Soul strategy, Artifact LANCEA is kind of tricky because this isn't necessarily a card that you would want to side LANCEA against, but if it just so happens to be in your main board, you can use Artifact LANCEA to prevent your opponent from activating those Tingy monster effects, such as Vashuda, which would get over one of your Floodgate cards, or even Ashuna or Adara to be able to recur your opponent's cards or get them cards from their deck to their side of the field. Another thing to note about Artifact LANCEA against the Sword Soul matchup is that your opponent can't use the effect of Shishao to negate a card, as it does require them to banish a Sword Soul or Worm card. That is one less disruption that you have to worry about when LANCEA is up, not when Sword Soul is up. Ultimately, LANCEA should be used as a follow-up option. Maybe you're trying to blow up your opponent's board and Shishao is preventing you, or maybe you want to protect your Floodgate, preventing them from Vashudaing you. Against Floowandereeze, you just want to use the LANCEA pretty much whenever. This card is amazing at preventing Floowandereeze at being able to follow up, as their level 1 monsters need to be banished to be added to the hand when a Winged Beast monster is summoned. It also prevents them from chain blocking a lot of times, as sometimes when they summon a Floowandereeze monster, they want to chain a banished Floowandereeze monster. Well, ya can't do that if they're going in the graveyard. Yes, Civilian Cali, I remember birds were a problem in my kingdom till I had them all executed. I know the story of Robin Hood. There'll be no Robina in my kingdom. Yeah, sure, that's a great idea, Emperor Cali. Do not oppose him, just nod and say yes. Another interesting thing about the Floowandereeze matchup is Dimensional Shifter. Now, if you really don't want your cards to be banished on their turn, then you can actually activate Artifact LANCEA in response to Dimensional Shifter, and all cards on that turn will not be able to be banished, meaning you can use hand traps like Droll and Lockbird. But keep in mind, if you do use Artifact LANCEA on the next following turn, Dimensional Shifter will go into effect, meaning everything will be banished. Now, Sword Soul, you want to use Artifact LANCEA after their first summon, just in case they have PSY-FRAMEGEAR Gamma, and on top of that, they're not going to immediately banish. Against Floowandereeze, you can use it whenever, because they just won't have a response. But against the Outlet strategy, it's a little bit different. This card is actually really good at buying you a turn if you need a turn, but make sure not to use this when they have Outlet Sanguine in the graveyard, and that being your only target. The reason because is they can just use the Sanguine as Chainlink too. It's not restricted to just the end phase. They can just kind of pop off with that card. But using this card to prevent Conquistador and Vaquero from being able to banish on any phase except for the end phase is pretty good. This could essentially buy you a turn and prevent your opponent from resetting. I think this is an A-okay idea. And lastly, against Prank Kids, don't do this. I mean, unless you're in the business of losing, don't do this. LANCEA does nothing to them. I mean, like, seriously, unless you want to be more disappointed than my dad telling me he'd take me to Legoland when I was 7. I'm still waiting for him to take me to Legoland. Make sure to keep Artifact LANCEA as far away from the Prank Kid strategy as possible. Moving forward, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit has so many applications in Yu-Gi-Oh! Not only being able to destroy a face-up card already activated on the field, but also being able to be special summoned from your deck to your side of the field with Emergency Teleport, meaning that you can have up to 6 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit inside of your deck technically, as you can just special summon it to your side of the field and activate its effect. It's one of the very few hand traps that can activate their effects on the field. With that being said, the Adventure Token engine is extremely susceptible to Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. If you do fear that your opponent is going to use the Wandering Griffin as a synchro summon for Baron de Fleur, unless you know they play multiple copies of Fateful Adventure. There's only like 2 decks that play multiple copies of Fateful Adventure, so, you know, your choice. Now, if you know your opponent isn't going to use that Wandering Griffin Rider for a synchro summon into Baron de Fleur, then you can go ahead and just let them finish off with their combo and then Ghost Ogre the Wandering Griffin Rider. This is extremely powerful because Rider needs to be able to shuffle himself back into the deck, and Ghost Ogre Soldier Boys that right into the graveyard. With that being said, Ghost Ogre is fairly good against the Phantom Knight deck that runs Adventure Token. Being able to stop Wandering Griffin Rider will allow you to use other cards like an Imperial on your opponent's entire board, which can finish off their turn. But if you also just so happen to catch a Phantom Knight player slipping, like, hold up, Pippin, if they happen to have a Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss on their field and nothing else, keep in mind, nothing else, using Ghost Ogre to get rid of Cherubini kind of prevents their line of making Rusty Bardish. I mean, they'd have to have a God Sin hand with amazing extenders just to get back into the Rusty Bardish, and to be honest with you, a lot of times that's what the deck really wants to do. Basically what I'm saying, if they start off their play fairly shaky by like special summoning a Psychic Wielder and a Junk Forward to their side of the field, make Cherubini and then send a Phantom Knight like Torn Scales, I mean, whoo, yeah, you gotta watch out. Ghost Ogre can really ruin their day. Against Sword Soul, hitting Hockley Fireworks should probably always be priority number 1. Yes, they'll be able to get the Despot monsters to their side of the field, but they don't have any other machines to tune it with. How they gonna make Auroradon? Other cards to note is against Moye and Taye. This is actually okay. The reason why I say it isn't as powerful because the real big card that you want to get rid of is the token. It is a normal monster which will proc the effect of their Tenye monsters, and it's also a tuner. Hey, Ghost Ogre can't do everything, but one thing that I've noticed a lot of players have been slipping on is the Yazi interaction. Yazi actually is a Yang Zing card, and for the people that don't know, I know because I loved Yang Zings for so long. Yang Zings are one of the only modern archetypes because ever since Yang Zing, I don't think there has been another one that can miss timing. If your opponent uses the effect of Yazi and you chain Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, the Yazi will get destroyed as Chain Link 2 and he won't be able to activate his effect because the last thing to happen is Yazi destroying cards. Now granted, Yazi will still destroy cards on the field, but they won't be able to special summon the Worm monster from their deck to the side of the field. Against Floowandereeze, if they don't chain block Robina, hit the Robina. But keep in mind, this isn't always the best play to do. If your opponent has a monster like Fluendery Street in their hand, they can add the Eaglin, then normal summon the Street, banish the Ghost Ogre, normal summon the Eaglin, and then they're back in the game. But this interaction puts your opponent on, hey, you better have the card, as opposed to, please don't have the card. Some of the best targets for Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit is the Fluendery's Map and Mist Valley Apex Avian, as both of these cards need to be able to be face up on the field or return to the hand respectively in order to resolve their effects. You can go ahead and Ghost Ogre these cards with confidence. Against Outlich, do you really want to win games here? This card should not be in your deck against Outlich. Keep in mind, both Hakero and Conquistador are not face-up already activated cards when they use their effects. I mean, outside of that, if you're still waiting on Legoland like me, then, I mean, you can wait for Ghost Ogre to be useful, right? Right? He's coming though, right? Right? And against Prank Kids, this has actually become a very unfortunate situation for them, as you can go ahead and use Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit on Prank Kids Doodle Doodle Doo if it is Chain Link 2. A lot of times Prank Kids player will use their Prank Kids monster as Chain Link 1. This is them avoiding cards like Cypher and Gear Gamma and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, cards that are really prevalent or have been prevalent more than Ghost Ogre, and Ghost Ogre just swoops on and hits the Prank Kids Doodle Doodle Doo. This can also be said for Prank Kids Rocket Ride as well. Go ahead and Ghost Ogre that Rocket Ride when it uses effect to reduce its attack, trying to protect that Prank Kids monster. But all of this, of course, can be moved if your opponent does have Prank Kids placed on their side of the field. They'll probably want to use this card as many times as possible to chain block Ghost Ogre. Don't use Ghost Ogre against this card. It's not really worth it. Ash Blossom is one of the most played hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh history. I mean, if Maxi was still around, I'm pretty sure Maxi would be number 1, but Ash Blossom takes the cake as the new number 1. If you're going against Phantom Knights, what you really want to watch is how your opponent starts their sequence. If they start off with Water and Tantrums of the Temple in their hand immediately, do not Ash Blossom this. Reason why is because they play 3 copies of Rite of Eremacier. You can go ahead and Ash Blossom this, and then they'll follow with the Eremacier. Use this on Fateful Adventure to prevent them from adding from their decks to their hand, not the equipped spell, adding the monster from the deck to their hand. You gotta watch out for that because they'll mess with you. But if they just so happen to use Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss to send Water Enchantress of the Temple from their deck to the graveyard, go ahead and Ash Blossom that. This means it is way less likely that I have Rite of Eremacier in their hand initially. Against Sword Soul, hit the Hockley Fibrix every single time. It's like a common theme, right? And if they just so happen to play the Faithful Adventure engine, the same rules apply. Reason being is because if they open their 1 copy of Wandering Griffin Rider inside of their hand, well, you got me. But the odds of them opening Water Enchantress of the Temple in Rite of Eremacier are way higher. Against Flunderies, it's fairly obvious to hit Ravina if you can. Good players will chain block the Ravina and protect you from Ash Blossoming it. I even have a deck profile where your opponent just can't Ash Blossom you. But if they give you the opening, you do it every single time. This is also really good if they preemptively use Fluendery's Advinity Adventure. If they're gonna go ahead and minus themselves to try to get a free search, yeah, you Ash Blossom that. Against Outlich, hitting the Sanguine is your best bet here. Hit it every single time you can, hit it as many times as you can, and then proceed to side this card out for better cards in game 2 and 3. And against Prank Kids, hitting their very first Prank Kids monster is always beneficial. Hitting that Prank Kids monster is always beneficial. It's a reason why they try to chain block it, preventing you from being able to Ash this card in the first place. Moving on, Joel and Lockbird is a card that you want to use almost every single time, almost immediately every single time. Against Phantom Knight, this card is devastating. Go ahead and drop Joel and Lockbird the moment that you can. It's especially good if they start off with the Brave token or the Adventure token engine, because if they use that effect to search that Rite of Eremacier with Water Enchantress of the Temple, that means that they can't search with Phantom Knight's Ancient Cloak or Silent Boots, which really inhibits their combo. Against Sword Soul, if they're on the Adventure token engine or the Punk engine, use this again ASAP. Yeah, go ahead, search that 1 card, but forget about using Moyi and Shishao. Forget about doing any other searches for the duration of the turn. Against Fluenderies, use this card immediately. This is literally one of the only hand traps, if not the only hand trap, they can't prepare for. I mean, if they use Dimensional Shifter, then obviously you can't use it. Or if they have the Cult by the Grave in response, I mean, if they have those, you like crying in the rain? I like crying in the rain. Let's cry in the rain together. Against Outlich, if you decided to side Joel and Lockbirds in, I think you should donate your brain to concussion research when you pass away, because this is definitely a, oh no, what are you doing, baby moment. I mean, it's fairly clear you've been hit on your head way too many times. I don't know if it was your mother, football, or banging your head on the desk playing Eldritch itself, but this ain't working. And lastly will be Nibiru the Primal Being. Where exactly should I use Nibiru? Well, if Phantom Knights just don't happen to start off with the Adventure Token engine, then using this card after they use the effect of Torn Scales in the graveyard is perfect. The card will be banished and they won't have any follow-up. If they just so happen to have the Adventure Token engine, then you're going to need another hand trap to stop Wandering Griffin Rider. Ghost Ogre and Infinite Impermanence seem to be everybody's cards of choice. Those are fairly good cards too. Again, Sword Soul, this isn't an amazing idea because a skilled Sword Soul player will make Baron de Fleur right before you can Nibiru them, so it's kind of challenging, but use this card willy-nilly when you can, if you can. Against Floowandereeze, this should never happen. This interaction just can't happen. They summon 4 times maximum, and their 5th summon will either be the Barrier Statue or AVN. Not a good idea. Against Eldritch, you should seriously consider about that brain thing I said, like, if you decide to side this against them. They summon less to Floowandereeze. And against Prank Kids, this is one of the cards that they happen to fear a lot, and the reason why they play that Adventure Token engine. The same rules apply if you just so happen to have a Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit for the Wandering Griffin Rider, or an Infinite Impermanence with a Nibiru. You can wipe their whole board whenever you please, preferably before they enter their end phase. Like, when they proceed to go to end phase, you say, end of main. Only esteemed individuals know when a Nibiru, and it's literally when they try to go in the end phase, because you just go end of main. Outside of Wandering Griffin, this deck sets up this many negations against you. It's just Battle Butler and ending your main. And that is all that I have for the hand trap guide inside of the Battle of Chaos format. It's been exciting to be able to give you this information. Of course, if you want to see more amazing videos, more guides, then let me know, big dog, right down below in the comments section. Also, be sure to check out these amazing videos, as I will be able to catch you on the next one.